Hey, somebody needs to calm down. You have? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to The Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. My purpose here today and with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life of your wildest dreams by giving you access to the greatest mentors the world has to offer today. The Professional Noticer is sponsored this week by our friends at Tucker ATV, Shannon and Lisa. They are just the best. You know, the variety of power sport products at Tucker ATV will just blow your mind. They got everything, Hustler turf equipment, the entire line of Echo power tools, and of course Tucker ATV carries every make and model of Polaris ATVs. They have the big Polaris side-by-sides, even bigger Ranger Crew. And you have to see the showroom. You have to experience the showrooms, taxidermy, antique displays, an indoor porch with its own porch swing. You got comfortable chairs, television, free coffee. Stop in and meet Shannon and Lisa Tucker. They treat customers like family, which is why folks from 14 states have done business with Tucker ATV. Highway 43 North in Jackson, Alabama. Tucker ATV, the small town business with the national reputation. Observations and answers, that's what we do here on The Professional Noticer. And if you've been a viewer or a listener for a while, you know we love it when somebody comes to the table with both. And we have that today. We don't do many return guests on The Professional Noticer. We're getting close to 350 episodes, and probably less than 5 of our guests have returned. And, that's not any big conspiracy or anything. It's just kind of how it has worked out. But our guest today is not only a friend of mine, but he is a friend to this program and a friend to you. And you know him as the #1 sales training guru in America for like several years running. This is the guru.com does the rankings every year, and he is above the sales training. There are names that you would recognize that Joe Pici is ranked way above them. And he quietly goes about his business and has for years training people in sales. And so please welcome our buddy, Joe Peachy. Hey, bud.
Welcome. Great to be back. I love your show, and I love your audience.
Well, thank you. And I have long been a fan of yours personally and professionally, and love, Polly and I love your family. And so I appreciate you doing this today, because I've got a specific question for you. And I really think, if it's okay with you, I want to build the show around one question. And this one question is something that I think that everybody experiences or has experienced or will someday experience. And that is, the question is, how do you rebound after a setback? So take it and run with that one, Joe.
Well,
how's that?
I heard it said from some speaker somewhere, a setback is a setup for a comeback. And Dawn and I have lived through many, many, many comebacks, but I will tell you this last one was the biggest challenge of our lives.
Really?
And I won't get into the details because, you and I have learned many times that people really don't give a rip about your problems, and they got their own to deal with. But I will tell you some of the things that I've had to do after a major setback. And I got to practice this a month ago. The first thing I do when we've had a devastating comeback, okay, whereas most people will sit and assess, and they'll try to figure out what happened. And what happens is what happened. So the first thing I do is I open the door to my office and I walk in and I sit down right here. And this is the war room. You can see that sign over that shoulder right there. And I've never been gifted with a great amount of talent or charisma, or, as you said so well years ago, never played on a Super Bowl team, didn't work for IBM, don't have this tremendous pedigree where business just falls off the shelf. The first thing I do in coming back from a major setback is I plug back into my process because I believe processes trump emotion. We have
Processes
a,
trump emotion.
yeah,
Yeah, well, I can't disagree with that. I know Nick Saban would agree with it.
well, and he's one of my favorite, might be my favorite college football coach because he's evolved so many times, but there's some foundational processes and procedures he will have never gotten away from.
Right,
Okay.
right,
And that's why he got out of the game because it didn't fit anymore.
right. Yeah,
So I sit down at this desk and the first thing I do is I plug back into my process, which is lead generation. I've got to get leads. Uh, and we have 17 different ways that we get prospect leads. That's one of the things we teach people to do. All right. And I'm not paying for lists. We mine leads. The second thing I had to do, which was the most critical and crucial, I had to outbound call and get back into the game because I believe the phone call is the toughest thing that people have to overcome. And if you can overcome that, you begin healing the tragedy or the setback. Okay.
right.
You start to build that muscle. All right. And so that's what I do. I get back on that muscle and I start making phone calls to decision makers, navigating gatekeepers in the corporate market, getting to decision makers, which starts the process of what we call, quote unquote, the core story or your sales meeting. All right.
Yeah,
Now, from there, it either goes to a proposal or it doesn't. So if your audience can see over my right shoulder, there's a whiteboard right back there.
yeah,
And that whiteboard has all the proposals that I do. So I got started back after a massive tragedy on June 1. And the tragedy caused a real mess financially, if I can say that.
right.
Actually, back against the wall type thing.
And this was a medical emergency in your family.
This was a medical emergency to both myself and my wife at the same time.
Right.
You understand? And the hospital, the whole, it's just ugly. And, but through the grace of God and through the process and procedure, I was able to begin the process of getting back into the game. Getting back into the game for me is the beginning of healing the wound and getting back on track.
It's almost like after a major surgery, people do rehab. And so this is almost like rehabbing from a major event.
There's no psychiatrist, there's no self-help books, there's no uh, walking on hot coals. You know, that's not going to right the ship. I know the program that you have for corporations gets to the core of the problem, the root of the problem.
Right.
And that's
Right.
why it rebuilds a company back to being profitable, efficient, effective. For us, what gets us back on course is Joe's got to get back into the game of what put us where we were. All right.
Yeah.
And so,
Does that bother you? Does that discourage you? Do you feel like, oh my God, I'm starting all over again? I mean, is that, or is that even or is that a thought that you have to banish? Um,
well, um, this is going to sound rude in a way, but I couldn't afford to feel sorry for myself, but I did get mad.
right.
because in 2021 our business was in position with no additional effort to triple, which would have put us in the upper 1% income in this country. So we were poised and positioned. We had actually figured out some ways to scale, okay? And then through a series of illnesses to my just stuff,
Right.
we found ourselves June 1 in a position where, oh my, we got to get going here. This is not, and so I love what I do, but it wasn't only a business of passion, it was a business of necessity.
Yeah. I think that's where most of us find ourselves. I mean, we love what we do, but we got to make it work.
Yeah, it has to work. So fixing it, and a certain amount of assessing is seeing where the market has gone. I mean, we're in a horrible economy right now, and I think anytime there's a change in the White House, whether it's good or bad, there's going to be a time by which businesses are settling, finding out their position. And so people sit on their wallets.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, you have to do a lot on the front end. Well, what I found out was by getting back into our process and procedure, getting back into the skills that built it to begin with, and the very things that we teach in our training, it began to heal. It began to increase our confidence, okay? And all of a sudden, we started to see the light flicker, right? Because
I'm gathering here a vision that is opposite of what I said a few minutes ago. What I said a few minutes ago is like, do you think, oh my God, I'm starting all over again? But I realized that what you're doing is you're relying on what you know to be true. You're relying on what you know that works. And it's just, I talked to Bart Starr one time and he told me about not doing well, the Packers not doing well in a particular game. And he said, Monday morning, Lombardi had him blocking, tackling, had Bart handing off the ball, taking snaps. And it was all, I guess at that point, they're not thinking, oh my God, we're going back to the beginning. They're thinking about, okay, this is what got us to where we are. Right. We got to remember what got us to where we are.
Football coaches are amazing, okay? Because this is what happens. They're going along in the season, and all of a sudden, they get upset by somebody that shouldn't have beat them. And so in college football, Sunday afternoon, there's a staff meeting. They don't come back on Monday and take Sunday off. They play on Saturday. So Sunday, they're in there 12, 13 hours. And the head football coach will always start the meeting with, men, we're going back to the basics. Well, I contend this. If the basics work to get you back on task, why did you ever leave them?
Wow, that's a great point. And I have to say, I have to stop and tell people here, you are one of the stories. You were a college football coach at D1 schools, major universities, and I tell people sometimes, I said, I know a guy who found out he was fired by reading USA Today. And
Yeah.
that's you. All right.
That happened.
The assistant coaches all came to, before daylight with their coffee and their donuts, and the USA Today's laid out, and one of you goes, uh-oh.
Yeah,
What?
this is not going to be a good day.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, but you are right. If the fundamentals are what got you there, why did you get away from them to begin with?
And in my industry, quote unquote, sales training, coaching, and all that, the majority of sales trainers and speakers don't sell. They're good people and they write wonderful books and they give great expository at conventions. But when it comes down to it, they're not selling.
Right.
And Sales is a funny thing. You can tell if a person is quote unquote selling. I believe every owner of every company needs to learn to sell because there will be a point in time where they have to lay people. Something will happen. And sales is the only thing that makes you money in business. Marketing costs you money, sales makes you money.
Yeah,
And so
that's a
when
great
we decided
distinction.
to open up Peachy and I was in a direct sales deal, and we decided we were in a convention up in Canada, and I looked at my wife and I said, "The horse is dead. Let's get off. We need to do something else with our lives. We have the skills, we have the ability to speak, train, and coach." And I said, and I heard Andy Andrews say one day, if you do not create profitability, if people cannot measure what you do, your business is not going to be recession proof. So I said, Dawn, what's the only thing that is recession proof? Sales.
Yeah,
So we went into sales training.
yeah. And boy, you have cut a wide swath there, and it is amazing. I know probably as much about you as anybody on the outside, and I can tell people that as far as cold calling, which is the oh my God, that is the scariest thing for everybody. Joe has actually secured contracts with the NFL Players Association and TSA with cold calls, which is hilarious to me. He said that doesn't even seem to be possible.
Well, whether it's a cold call, a warm call, or a hot call, all these companies that are turning their client retention or new client acquisition over to AI, I'll go head to head with them all day long and I'll get the contracts. Many years ago, a very famous IT person said in a high tech world, people will crave human interaction. So, in our 3 day sales boot camp or a corporate training, or I got a guy flying in from Texas for one on one coaching, we're going to spend a couple hours making real calls in real time to real people. Okay. And we'll navigate the gatekeeper. We'll get return phone calls. All the things people say against phone calling, we'll prove it wrong because we're actually doing it. I looked into your program that you're working with large companies with, which is incredible. What an incredible product. But you're working with real life stuff. This is real life stuff that's improving people's interactions, that improving their lives. And so when you find a hole in the market, you found a hole in the market, I found a hole in the market, and you become an expert in it, you'll find clients.
You know, I have to, and I don't know if I'll get in trouble at home for saying this, because I'm a dad, and I tend to put my foot in my own mouth sometimes, where, well, gosh, I didn't know you wouldn't have wanted me to say that. But let me just go ahead and say, you know, Austin and Adam.
Yeah.
And Austin, when he started his knife business years ago, you were gracious enough to scholarship him to one of your sales boot camps in Orlando.
Yeah.
And Austin flew down there. It was the first time he'd stayed in a hotel room by himself. And he was by far the youngest guy at the boot camp. I mean, I think he was still in high school. And and I knew what he was going to have to do. And he didn't. I was the one who was terrified because I've been around you. I knew what you were going to make him do. and and Austin came back and he was like, "Oh my God, Mr. Joe had me. I had to make cold calls." Really? Yeah. I mean, I had to make one in front of everybody. And I just wanted to duck my head and go, oh my God. He said it was the hardest thing I've ever done. And 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 so his knife business continues to go. Okay. But he's a songwriter and a singer now. And if you look at his schedule, he's doing 15 or 16 dates a month. And they're in places, like restaurants and Puckett's and the Puckett's places around Nashville, and they're in places down here like Billy's um, and Cobalt and Jenny Lane's, but the thing is, I asked him, I said, buddy, you don't have an agent. How are you getting these dates? All your friends are doing like 2 dates a month, and you're doing 15, 16, 17, sometimes 18 in a month. How are you getting these dates? He said, well, I'm just like calling the places. And I'm like, seriously? He said, oh, yes, sir. And I said, like, what are you doing? He said, well, it's what Mr. Joe taught me years ago. And he said, and I have kind of found out that I'm calling, nobody else is calling.
That's right.
He said, I'm just kind of, he said, I'm in a game where I'm kind of the only one playing.
That's right.
And so if I just wanted you to know how that has worked out for him, and how that skill that you taught him, that he brought that back in another area. And man, it's great what you have done. Our family will always be grateful to you for that.
Well, it was a lot of fun to have him because I remember he thought everybody was watching him, but nobody was watching him because they were all on the phone themselves.
Sure,
But
sure.
him being 17 years old, but I'll never forget, he called the manager of a major food chain, and he had to navigate the gatekeeper, which is one of the scripts we built for him. And he got to the guy, and the guy decided he was going to buy a whole lot of knives. And I'll never forget when everything was all over and he was getting ready to go home, and he stayed over the Wednesday night, and I was setting up for my next training. I said, you got a problem. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, you now know how to sell. Do you have the back end of manufacturing to make all this stuff? Invariably, I go into companies, small, medium, and large, or even individuals, and they do everything else. They've got the website, and they've got the building, and they've got the staff, and they got manufacturing. But they never figured out that if they don't get customers and or clients, they don't have a business. And then they look at me and they go, like, do you work per bono? No, I don't work per bono. I'm the only person that's going to help you make money in this place. And you got a note coming in a certain amount of days. If you don't address sales, you might be doing something else this time next year.
Wow. That's true though. It's true.
No,
And that's what, when with creating measurable results, when we work with entire companies, I mean, you're working with sales staffs and specifics. You're like a surgical strike, and we're like a blanket,
right.
that we're covering every single employee in the place. And I look at what you and I do in somewhat the same light, in that I I want to say to a company owner or a corporate CEO, I want to say, do you plan on we coach on a 3-year curriculum, and
Right.
so I want to say, we're in one of three places in this country. We're either in a golden age, we are either in a horrible economic situation, or we're just kind of flat. And that's always going to be the case. But 3 years from now, do you plan on being a business?
Yeah.
So how do you want to navigate the golden age? Do you want to squeeze as much juice out of the orange as you can?
No,
Do you want to survive if we're in economy? Do you want to be forced with laying off a bunch of people, or do you want to thrive while everybody else is dealing? And if we're flat, do you want to be flat?
right.
And
I hear you.
so come on, we got to do something. We
Yeah.
got to do something. And so I love, I asked you the question at first, how do you rebound after a setback? And and I think you've answered the question perfectly, because it's not, I think people are looking for rocket science sometimes. And sometimes the simplest answer is the most obvious, and it's the best. You
But they don't
got to
always like
learn.
it. They don't, you know that your program, if a company invests in it, you know you're going to double or triple it. Okay. I know
Right,
this. The training pays for itself the very days I'm there because we're going to create business. We always have 100% of every client we've ever worked. The, the investment gets paid for while we're training. But that doesn't always mean they're going to do it. And
right,
that's
right,
why June 1st, when I opened that office door, and I can't tell you, I was, yay, I am so fired up about doing this. I wasn't. I had had a major setback like I've never had. And I sat down at this desk and I said, what do you know? You know your process works. That's what you know. It's been proven. Your process works, Andy. It's been proven. You got the data. Now, am I going to plug into it and let the process work for me? Or am I going to try to uh, get this emotional feeling of, I got to feel good when I'm going through it? Not everybody in those companies wants to go through your program, but when they go through it, they come out on the other end a better person, a better company, right? So I plugged in. And at the end of the month, at 5 o'clock on the last day of June, I had put out 82 proposals, formal proposals. Now, here's what I know about sales there's a whole lot of money there. It may not close immediately. I mean, 82 to 86% of all sales happens between the 6th and the 15th contact. So there will be follow up involved, right? But I know this by doing that, Joe went from 0% up to 70% of efficiency. Okay. So the work actually began the healing and the comeback began to happen. All right. And I was able to close 8 deals already from those proposals. And just like anything else, when companies begin to see the results of what your program does, it's like giving meat to a lion. All of a sudden, they're going, we need to make sure all of our people are doing this program because look at what happened to Bob. Bob was
right.
negative. Bob was destroying the culture of our business. What I believe you really do is you change the culture of a company. I change the culture of their outbound or inbound client acquisition and client retention. That's the part of culture I change, but you change the entire corporate culture. And and I know when you have a healthy culture, everything grows.
Yeah. Yeah. Dave Ramsey told me the other day, he said, culture eats strategy for lunch.
Exactly. And I agree with that. And you are a blanket. But when I walk into a company, though, I'm working with the foot soldiers, or the solopreneurs.
Right.
I do a
Yeah.
lot of work, believe it or not, in the franchise world. I help franchisors sell franchises, but then I also work with the franchisees on how they bring more people into their departments. And franchises are an amazing thing. Franchises used to have a 90% success rate. Now It's all the way down to in the 40 percentile. Why?
Really?
Because people do not cookie cutter their franchise. They all have a new idea. What your blanket does, it literally goes into the very depths of the people and it raises everything almost like we're all hearing the same information. And so we're all getting better.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, this is good stuff, Joe. If you don't mind, I mean, you and I keep up with each other anyway, and I would love to just kind of report back to people at what's happening and what's happening with those 80 plus proposals. And
Well, I got a gift for your folks.
okay, all right, tell
All
me.
right. If all your folks will take out their phone, I got some great gifts.
Okay,
Put the word sales edge in the message, SALESEDGE, and text that to 59925. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to get one of a couple things. I'm going to reach out to you and you get to get a complimentary cup of Joe. Anybody who ever wants a complimentary cup of Joe, you just pick up the phone and call me at 407-947-2590. But anybody who hits that number, I'll take $500 off of any of our coaching packages, $500 off of our sales boot camp, which is October 27, 28, 29. 4 years in a row, that boot camp has been ranked the #1 sales workshop in the world.
yeah, yeah,
In our business of speaking, training, coaching, and consulting, whereby we don't teach you how to speak, train, coach, we teach you how to make money doing it. So that's 59925 to Sales Edge, and you'll hear from me, and we'll have that cup of Joe together.
that is awesome. That is awesome, buddy. Thank you, and we'll have all the information on the show notes. And I really appreciate you taking the time.
No, it's
To
my
be here.
pleasure.
You have
Hey, I'm
helped-
looking out for companies that could use your program because I believe in it. Really.
Well, I appreciate you've helped me today, so I very much appreciate the conversation.
Well, stay in touch here.
All right, buddy. I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through challenges all the way to an answer for you. And I think that'll do it for this week. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and to the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of The Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing that tiny bit of mental energy I have for you, seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Sandpaper for the cast and crew provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by the Reminder app. Are you the reminder in your family? Do you believe that without reminding your spouse or children over and over again, nothing will ever get done? Now there's an app for that. The Reminder app, found online at nagnag.com, is a revolutionary communication tool just right for reducing the level of resentment in your home. After downloading the app, enter family cell phone numbers and choose a particular pathway. Simply pick a family member, pick a date on the calendar, click on a pathway like garbage, and sit back. Nagnag.com will do the rest. Your husband will begin receiving a series of 18 text messages about mid-afternoon. Tomorrow's garbage day. 30 minutes later, don't forget, garbage out tonight. 30 minutes after that, remember the garbage can in the playroom. And every 30 minutes until you opt out of the feed. Garbage pickup in the morning. Trash cans out tonight. Garbage to the road before bedtime. Both cans, all the way to the road. Use this service in many ways. How much homework do you have? Homework before play. Have you done your homework? All your homework, including the algebra? Did you show your work? Double check your answers? Was it done neatly? Yes, now you can use the reminder app to be irritating for you. That's nagnagnag.com. Download the app today. Do it now. Have you downloaded the app yet? How are you going to use it first? Is my name in there? How many names did you list? Remind me to gas up the car, if you will, and bread from the store. Today, on the way home from work.